Welcome back, everyone. We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn, bringing you yet another exciting episode of the Top Innovator series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and the brilliant minds behind them. I'm Joseph Martins, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is Daniel Olshansky. Daniel is the CTO at Grove, an open marketplace for APIs. Before that, he held tech leadership roles at several other companies, including Waymo and Magic Leap. And we're thrilled to have him with us today. Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Joseph. Really excited to be here, talk about my story, my history, and then some of the tech leadership lessons that I've gained along the way.
That's exactly the topic, Daniel. Awesome. So you're clearly successful in your journey, and we'd love to talk about what drives that success. So when you reflect on your own journey, what do you think are some of the ingredients for your success?
So what I'll say is the tech side of things is always kind of really fun and really easy. Right before we started this conversation, you mentioned the technical people really like to nerd out. But when it comes to looking for feedback from my peers, looking for kind of comparing notes with my friends and executives at other companies, I would say it's like the EQ side rather than IQ side that becomes really, really difficult and complex. Because to build a culture, to build a team, to build a company that goes beyond just the tech, it's the emotional side and the effectiveness of how the team collaborates on a day-to-day basis. And there's really no right way of doing things. There's many different right ways of doing things and many wrong ways of doing things. And that's what makes it hard. And also that's what makes it fun, and that's what makes it interesting. So I think, go ahead.
So tell me, what makes it hard on a personal level, right? So I get it, more ambiguity, more complexity, fuzzy, not black and white, and so on. What makes it difficult on a personal level?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in a moment, and I'll answer that question with a mantra that I created for myself.
Okay.
So a mantra that I created for myself is that every mantra has a counter mantra. And the way that goes is, you might have heard all of this advice. It's all about product, or revenue, or growth, or effectiveness. Like you can hear there's all these, bite-sized level of advices that are applicable at a specific point in time, at a specific instance, at a specific situation, circumstance. And what makes it hard on a personal level is knowing which one to use at the appropriate time. And it's also that self-reflection of, am I using the wrong tool today? Okay. So the way I often like to think about it is, we have expertise, which is kind of technical expertise that you learn on the job, in education, on the side, in the evenings. And then there's experience. And experience is kind of building up your toolbox, but then leadership is knowing which tool to use. So you can have a really big toolbox, but if you're just using the same one every single time, then that's not leadership. That's very mechanical. And so personally, the thing that makes it really hard is you build up this toolbox and you're thinking, should I be using this one or this one? For example, sometimes you want to let your engineering team have no meetings at all. Like everyone, sometimes you need to let people have 3 days in a cave and not push them and let them think. Other times you might need to push the team more, or you just need the team to collaborate together. And finding that balance of, we need to have daily stand-ups for 3 weeks straight, or we need to have a week off across the entire company. Or, we actually need to be on a call the entire day, like in a war room until this is done. That's going to push people in different directions. There's business impacts, things come up, there's emotional aspects. You got to take people's energy into consideration, including your own, because they're kind of not feeding off of your energy as a leader, but they're looking for you for leadership and direction. And if your energy goes lower, so does everybody else's. And it's finding that balance, finding the tool to use. And personally, maybe I overthink it sometimes, but in my head, I'm always like, am I using the right tool right now? Should I change? Am I changing too fast? And I mean, this is why I'm still on my journey as well. I'm sure I'm going to be much better at it in 10 years and in 20 years and in 30 years. And this is why I think actually leadership is one of those things that you only get better at. You know, athletes, when you're 80, you're not going to be as good of an athlete as when you're 20. Maybe even if you need to make a scientific innovation of some sort, they say that, you know, scientific breakthroughs are done by people in their 20s and their 30s. But I think, you know, a 200-year-old leader, once we reach that stage of being able to live that long, is you know, as long as you're in a good state of mind, I'd argue you'd be a better leader than in your 50s and 60s, 70s, and 80s, simply because your toolbox is bigger, but you also know which tool to use and for how long to use it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it.
So when you mentioned it at first, every mantra has a counter mantra. My initial thought was this sounds like Newton's third law or something like that. And we're talking about opposing forces, and that's not what you meant. And that's interesting, right? You have the whole toolbox available to it. So I'm curious now, how do you decide? How do you decide what the right tool is? When is the time to switch? Talk a little bit about the decision process. And if it's just gut feeling, that's good as well, right? So I don't want to overanalyze something that might just be instinct.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. One day I'm going to have the right answer to it, and I'll let you know. Get another call.
Okay.
But on a serious note, I think a lot of, like, I've heard this many times, but many other leaders have said that you got to trust your gut and you got to trust your intuition, and that's a really big part of it. So you do need to trust your gut. You do need to trust your intuition. You can't overthink it, but then you got to reflect on it. So the way I go about it is I trust myself and my experience and expertise enough to make a good decision at any moment in time that day. But then when the day ends, I go on a walk and I reflect on it. So then when the next morning starts, I'm like, did I make a good decision today? And if we had some sort of result, and if I can tell that the energy on the team was elevated or there was some sort of outcome, I might do the same thing tomorrow. But if I see that everybody was stalled and the team's energy went down, then I start, you know, maybe sitting down or walking or writing and thinking, I'm going to use a different tool tomorrow. But at that moment, you can't really overthink it. You just got to go with something and know that there's a 50-50 chance that you'll be wrong. And as long as you're right 51% of the time and wrong 49% of the time, you're still going to trend in the right direction in the long term.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. Let me take a completely different look at your leadership journey. I'm sure you had many mentors, trusted advisors, people who were along your side on your professional journey. Talk to me about some of the advice that they gave you, and especially the advice that really resonated, that stuck with you, that you think is important to you.
That's a fun question. There are two people that come to mind immediately, and they were actually in my earlier engineering journey, not even as a leader, but more so as an engineer. But I'm gonna touch on a few different people. So this is funny. In 2012, on my first day as an intern at Twitter, my manager told me, "You're gonna be reading more code than you write in your career." And as an intern, as a 19-year-old intern, I was thinking, I don't believe you. It's all about writing code. A few years later, you realize, oh, he was so right. And in an AI-enabled world where, you know, we get AIs to write a lot more code, it's even more true. And I think back to what his name is Ryan Perry. I think back to what he told me many, many times. And it just comes back to me, especially as AI progresses more and more, writing more code for us. I think that's one. Another one, there's this individual named Yoshi. He was Twitter's most tenured employee. He's a very undercover architect. He worked there for almost 12 years. And he was my mentor who really taught me what it means from being an engineer to being an architect of a system. And we really sat down many times, kind of architected Twitter's gift service, some of their other databases, some of their systems. And he never said anything, but he showed me what it means to think deeply. And I do think to that every once in a while as well. And it just meant, you know, sometimes you got to move fast and break things. Sometimes you got to really take a step back and think deeply about the problem before you do anything. So it's that balance. It's those tools and toolboxes and balancing the two.
So say a bit more. I'm intrigued about what you said there, what it means to think deeply. Say a bit more about that. What does it mean? Is that something you can encapsulate easily in a few sentences?
What it means to think deeply is figuring out if the problem is figuring out what problem you really need to solve and whether you should or shouldn't be solving it. And once you make a decision as to whether you should or shouldn't be solving that problem, it's whether you should be tackling it from a trial and error perspective or an architecture first perspective, or, to throw out some other terms, in an agile perspective or a waterfall perspective. And again, this comes with gut and intuition. So when there's a lot of recency bias whenever you work in a certain environment. So if you spent a decade in a big company, you might bias to waterfall. If you spend a decade, in a very small team, you might bias to just shipping something to production without even having anybody look at it. If you've been in a sales role, you might just prioritize the customer no matter what, at any cost, whether it's a financial cost or a team morale cost or a tech debt cost. You got to make all these trade-offs. So thinking deeply is really, for me, it's, should I be solving this problem at all? Is step one. And when I decide whether I should or shouldn't be solving that problem, it's how do I want to approach this problem with the team?
Got it. Okay, got it. Thank you.
There's one more I wanted to share, one more story about feedback I got. And this is, I would say there are 3 people that have told me this. And these are friends that are executives at other companies. And it's something we reminisce on, that in order to be a leader, in order to be a founder, and in order to drive, you need to like pain. For better or for worse, you need to enjoy the pain, you need to know how to endure pain, and then you need to know how to balance it with everything else in life. But the important thing is kind of knowing how to get really, really close to kind of the max pain that you can handle, and the pain that you kind of protect your team from, but also disseminate across the team without pushing everybody over the line. Because you don't want burnout, you don't want morale. So you got to push people to the line, to each individual's maximum potential, including yourself. You want to push yourself to your maximum potential without crossing that line. Because if anyone who has crossed that line, and I have crossed that line a couple of times, it takes a long time to recover from. But you got to know where that is, because if you don't, you'll never really reach your maximum potential. So pain is good. And I'm gonna quote Ray Dalio, because I was listening to him this morning on the CEO of Adari podcast. He said that growth is pain and reflection. So you push yourself to the line, you reflect on it, and then that's how you grow afterwards. And then it really resonated.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we talked about your past leadership journey. I'd love to take a look at today, Daniel, where you are today. And like before, not a question about companies, roles, or projects. It's about your leadership journey. When you look at where you are today, what do you think is a real growth opportunity for you? What's an area you want to focus on? What's an area where you feel this is an area where I can find my next level?
That's a good question. I think a place where I can really upgrade myself right now is not just being a leader within my company, but being a leader within the community. Because the way you really achieve big impact is by inspiring people. You can lead people within your company, you can inspire people within an industry. And once you get to a certain stage, you inspire people across the entire world. So when it's your team and you know each other and you know how you work, it's easier. You get on a call, you make a decision, and then you get everybody pumped up. Our company right now, we also have an ecosystem and community around it. So every once in a while, I get on a community call on Discord, and they're looking for some sort of direction or inspiration, even though you guys don't work on a day-to-day basis, and they don't have as much context into what you're doing. So you need to really figure out how to communicate what the direction is without getting too technical or too high level or too that balance of detail and direction. So that's kind of step one. But longer term from that, I would love to take it to the next level where even people outside our industry see the direction we're taking, kind of seeing the vision, and maybe just opportunities like this where I can share my learning that are applicable regardless of what industry you're in.
Yeah. So essentially expanding the universe in which you operate, right? Expanding the sphere and then using different tools of influence, probably.
I would say expand the sphere within which I can inspire people. And the reason for that, because I've reflected, why do I want to be a founder? Why? Because I've worked for companies and you can learn a lot, and there's really smart people, really great companies. But when I have free time, what do? I read books about founders. I listen to podcasts by founders, present or past, right? Because those ideas and those people and their movements and what they change inspires me to do more, inspires me to do something bigger than myself. So maybe even in 200 years when I'm not around, someone will be listening to a podcast about a company or a project that I started, and it makes me excited to think that there's a generation of company or a brand or an action that inspires someone who's the grandchild of a grandchild of a grandchild that's going to be born, hundreds of years from now.
That's a neat horizon. I love the time horizon there. Very, very cool. Yeah.
Long-term thinking. Because short-term execution, long-term thinking.
Because sometimes people have the focus on the next quarterly results, right? And especially in a corporate context, a lot of the focus is there, and there is nothing lasting in there often, right? There's nothing. I've heard the term inheritable once. There is not much there, but if you have the long-term focus, it is there.
Yeah, but you do need to execute in the short term, right? You can't have your head in the clouds, but you also can't only be thinking about the next quarterly results.
Yep.
And I think the greatest founders of our generation are the ones that manage to balance the two.
Yep.
And that's what really succeeds.
Then let me ask you about the future. We're talking about the future. So let me ask you about your future. And again, not about companies, right? About leadership. Let's imagine we were to have this conversation again in 5 years. Speculate what might be different about your perspective on leadership at that point.
Oh, that's a good question. How might you change on leadership in 5 years? So something I think about is whenever I write blog posts or whenever I write in my personal journal, my goal is always one of my goals is to inspire my future self. So that if today I were to listen to a podcast we do 5 years from now, I want today's Daniel to think, man, that guy knows what he's doing. So I don't know if I have an exact answer for how my view on leadership will change. What I know is I'll have more experience leading bigger teams. So right now I have a relatively small team. I haven't led a team big enough where I have managers managing managers. I have led teams where I manage a handful or a dozen of ICs. And that's one piece. Now I know to get to the next level, it'll be managers of managers, and then once the company gets even bigger, it'll be several levels. I obviously want to minimize those levels. I don't have a goal of how big of an org, but it has to be the right size for whatever problem we're solving there. So I think in 5 years, when we talk about it, I'll have a different perspective on kind of the emotional intelligence and how I'll be building culture differently by leading leaders. Whereas right now I'm leading individuals. I'm working on inspiring a community and an ecosystem. But I feel like we can do so much. I feel like I can do so much more. Especially over the next 5 years.
This notion of saying something today or doing a podcast today that will inspire you in a few years if you see it again. I love that. My mind immediately thinks, how do I turn this into some kind of activity for the Tech Executive Club community or something like that? Because that is neat to come up with something.
Inspire your future self.
Inspire your future self.
That's how you know you're progressing. right? And whether it's through podcasts or writing or presentations, it can come in so many, and that's the thing, it can come in so many ways, depending on what your experience or on what your vibe is, like, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely. Yep. Let me ask you one last question, Daniel, and then we'll wrap it up. If you had a magic wand and you look at your peers, you look at other tech executives, and there's one thing you can change about how they typically lead, what change would you make?
Okay, if I had a magic wand and I can change about how I or other leaders operate.
How many tech leaders operate. Yeah. And I know we're stereotyping, but let's just do it anyway for the fun of the conversation.
Yeah. Give me one moment to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I had a magic wand and I could change how everybody operates, you know how in Disney movies sometimes they have that little devil or an angel that's on your shoulder? So if I had a magic wand, I would love someone that would always be giving you very concrete feedback on what you're doing well and where you can be improving as a leader. Because very oftentimes when you're a leader and you're asking people who report to you for feedback, there's a balance. They want to give you very direct feedback, but they hesitate or they haven't thought about it. If it's your peer, they might not have a full context into what you're doing day to day and how you operate with the people around you, or with customers, or reports to the community. So they can only give you so much feedback. And I found that the best feedback that I get is through multiple conversations, both internally and outside of the org, and it takes time. But if I could just always have someone tell me, you're pushing too hard on this person, you're not pushing enough, you're spending too much time here, or you're not spending enough time there. Someone who is always there, kind of giving you constant feedback so that you can always improve and catch your errors earlier rather than later. I think that would go a long way. And that way, you're not only building a better product, a better culture, you're also going to be kind of nicer, more influential, and kind of more inspiring to everyone around you. So really constant feedback. And I think we'll be there, actually. I don't need a magic wand. We have AI. Right? So when we get to a point where an AI is recording everything you're saying all the time, as long as everyone's okay with you recording what they're saying to you and you're recording what you're saying to them, at the end of the day, I'll get that feedback right away. Like, it'll be recorded on my screen, my audio. So now that you asked that question, I said all this out loud. I think the magic wand is here, and it's just a matter of time until the magic happens.
Fascinating. Yeah. And I like the image of the little devil and the little angel sitting on the shoulders and just speaking to you all the time. And it shortens the feedback loop, and the reflection is improved then.
Yeah, 100%.
Daniel, it's been a real pleasure having you on the conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Many things that will stick with me, many highlights here. Thank you so much for that, Daniel.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
To everyone else out there, please remember to share, like, and subscribe. And most importantly, join us again for the next episode of the TAP Innovator series. And until then, keep your brain cells active.